Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Abominations in Technicolor, the podcast where we review the overlooked, underrated, and critically panned films of the past in a new light. My name is Matt Cook, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my brother, Adam. How's it going, Adam?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Joining me as well as a hot cup of coffee, ready to do another episode this week. Excited on this one. This one's gonna be good. Hope you're ready.
Yeah, we're recording this on a fine Sunday morning, so we're ready to rock and roll, as you could say, with our Folgers in hand.
Folgers today, huh?
Yeah. But one topic we sort of wanted to dive in before we get into our main topic of Gone in 60 Seconds with Nicolas Cage is sort of the dying physical media. And we've seen that in the last maybe 5 to 10 years with CDs. But we're really starting to see that with Blu-ray and all these streaming giants popping up like Netflix and Hulu, and Disney's going to have one, I think, later this year, and they're going to have all this exclusive sort of Star Wars and Marvel content that you probably won't be able to get anywhere else. They probably won't even have it available to purchase on Blu-ray or DVD, which is a bummer. But one thing I experienced sort of the beginning of this weekend is that we had some severe weather in our area, and it was knocking out people's power, and my internet was like off and on for like the last 3 days. And whenever it would turn on, it would only be on for maybe an hour or so, enough for me to like try and start to do something, but then never be able to finish it because it would go out by the time I could finish the work I was doing. But I cut the cord in terms of cable, so I don't have any sort of major TV cable provider. I'm using YouTube TV, so everything's just streaming. And I had guests over this weekend, so it's like, well, what do I do to entertain you? Well, I go to my Blu-ray collection, and I pick maybe 5 to 10 of movies that I probably don't think that they have seen, and I put them on the TV. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I was purchasing movies digitally on the Google Play Store or on iTunes and stuff like that. I don't know. What are your sort of thoughts on this, the dying age of physical media, and whether you should kind of buy Blu-rays or just digitally?
Well, it's such a balance, because I really want to have a physical copy. And I want to have that digital copy for convenience of traveling on the go and things like that. So, yeah. And oftentimes you can, maybe even have a better quality copy out there, like 4K or whatever, if I play a 4K digital copy on my TV with my Roku, I don't really have a 4K Blu-ray player. Like, I could get one. Probably not too expensive now this year, but there's just so many pros and cons of each medium that I think it's important to have both. And when we were prepping for Gone in 60 Seconds, first I check streaming services. I'm looking at, where can I find this movie for free and watch it again for free, and rather than renting. If I can't find that, then I'm like, and I thought to myself, I'm pretty sure I own this movie. And we moved 1.5 years ago, and I had a box just full of DVDs, not even Blu-rays. And I went down there and I dug through those, and I found Gone in 60 Seconds. So, like, to your point of being able to entertain, should the power go out, well, not power go out, but should the internet go out and you can't stream, then absolutely having those physical copies pays. I mean, it in an event like that, but I don't know. It's kind of like the bulk of it. It's like, do I want to get rid of, I think I just want to get rid of the cases, maybe get like a a book with sleeves and put all the DVDs in there and get rid of all the plastic cases. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe something like, I mean, that is the sort of, one of the issues is where do you store all this shit? Like my wife doesn't want me to have, a big ass shelf in the living room, with all these Blu-rays.
It's no longer cool and modern to have a massive bookshelf or stand that has all of your DVDs on it.
Right. But when I some people look at me like, what are you buying Blu-rays or I don't buy DVDs, but what are you buying Blu-rays for at this day and age? And it's like, well, if the internet goes out, you'll be rewarded. And I absolutely felt like that when the internet was down and we needed something to watch, something to throw up on the TV, maybe just for background entertainment while everybody's sort of talking. I felt rewarded that I went out and I bought all of these movies and I could choose any one of them to pop on.
It's heroic. It really is.
It is.
You're a modern day movie hero.
I saved the day.
You did.
By going into the basement and grabbing those Blu-rays.
I think we all need to give you a round of applause.
All right.
Great job.
Thank you.
No, I agree though. I do. It's something about that physical media too, like having it in your hand, like just, I don't know. It's open up the case, take the cellophane or whatever that is off of the unwrapping experience. Like
it feels good.
You don't get that when you buy a digital copy.
No. Well, even a lot of times, it depends where you're sort of watching it, but even like the behind the scenes stuff, you don't really have access to if you buy the movie digitally. I mean, some places, I think like Vudu, you can watch. Yeah. That's one of the sort of digital sites I use or apps like on the smart TV, and they have all the behind the scenes stuff, but that's not always the case. And if you go to Netflix or Hulu, you can't watch any of the behind the scenes stuff with those movies. Not even the original Netflix or Hulu branded content. They don't have behind the scenes. So I've always liked watching that stuff. You look at the Star Wars prequels, regardless of what you think of those movies, there's several hours worth of behind the scenes content, and you can't get that anywhere else. I love that stuff, and it's what's always made that physical media that much better.
Yeah, my Lord of the Rings trilogy, this box. I mean, it's what is it, 7 discs or something?
Yeah, it's something like that.
The extended edition collection, like that thing, and it looks beautiful. It's an awesome case. I mean, you can't tell me that the digital copy of something like that is going to outdo my Blu-ray. But eventually, Blu-ray will be, the new DVD, and we'll be singing a different tune. But for now, in 2019, I think we can still rely on our Blu-rays.
Yeah. But moving on, I think it's time to get into our main topic of Gone in 60 Seconds.
And now our feature presentation.
You want to go for a ride?
Oh, yes. Warning, this ride may be too intense. For anyone with a weak heart.
Don't look at me! Turn away!
Faint pulse.
Here's where it gets tricky.
Or a low tolerance for speed.
Suspect southbound, 140 miles an hour.
Nicolas Cage. Gone in 60 seconds.
Are you all right? Because you just drove through a wall.
Starts June 9th.
All right, everybody. Gone in 60 Seconds. 2000. This movie, off a $90 million budget, pulled in $101 million domestic, $237 million worldwide. That being the 22nd highest grossing film of that year. Other films of that year would include the likes of Gladiator, Castaway, X-Men, and Mission Impossible 2. So good company there. I mean, we're looking at Russell Crowe, Tom Hanks, Hugh Jackman, and Tom Cruise. These are, maybe at that time, the top 4 or top 5 if you include Nick Cage in there.
Yeah, well,
for these leading men.
Nick Cage, I mean, for a lot of people that, sort of are catching Nick Cage, from the late aughts up until now, Nick Cage was like one of the leading men in Hollywood. A couple of years earlier, he won the Oscar for Leaving Las Vegas, and he was one of the biggest action stars of this sort of era. So he was definitely one of the Hollywood's main guys.
Yeah, for sure. And Gone in 60 Seconds, I mean, we'll get into this movie in full, but I was surprised to see, well, I wasn't really surprised to see, but you may be surprised to know that Rotten Tomatoes, which is currently boasting a 98% for the third How to Train Your Dragon installment, they are giving Gone in 60 Seconds a abysmal 25%, an audience score of 75%. So we have this inverse relationship between the critic reviews and the audience score. So, which is pretty common amongst some of these films that we've selected for your listening pleasure. But yeah, I think this movie is right there in line with a lot of the director Dominic Sena, his work in like California and Swordfish. This movie does have some similar flavors to Swordfish, and I thought that throughout the movie. But Matt, what are your thoughts on Gone in 60 Seconds? I mean, do you remember back in 2000 seeing this thing?
I don't necessarily remember the first time I saw Gone in 60 Seconds. I feel like I probably saw it in theaters, but
okay.
I've always kind of loved this movie. Not as much as I like some of my favorite films, but it's always kind of like, I don't even want to say it's like a guilty pleasure because I don't feel guilty loving it. So I don't know. I've always liked this movie. I'll say that. And sort of in the early 90s and kind of not really early 90s, but late 90s, early 2000s, there's kind of this shift in pop culture where like extreme sports and street racing was like the thing. You had shows like Jackass and you had Tony Hawk breaking all these skateboard records and all these games, whether it's snowboarding, skateboarding, street racing, all this stuff was just pouring out in pop culture. And I was really into sort of kind of like fast cars and watching like shows on TV where like people would like soup up their cars and stuff like that. So I was attracted to Gone in 60 Seconds when it came out. And it's cheesy. There's some ridiculous aspects about it, but I feel like it has a great sort of ensemble and a lot of comedic flavor that really sort of works well with sort of the darker theme of the movie of what's actually at stake. And I don't know. I just find this movie to be a real hoot.
Well, I'll say my first experience with it, I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure I first saw this movie at our buddies Garrett and Alex's house.
Oh, okay.
Which shout out to those guys. But they had a pretty kick-ass surround sound setup, which I feel like really made the viewing experience for this movie. And I didn't see it in the theater, obviously. I saw it on DVD, but I feel like we did it justice by being able to see it in that room with that surround sound. Because like you were saying, with the racing and the sound effects of this movie, like the sound design and everything is very good. I I mean, it's awesome. It really, really pumps. So, and then when I watched it myself, I just wanted to note, like, when I pulled up my DVD to watch this movie, you know how some DVDs prior to going to the main menu, they'll show trailers?
Oh, yeah.
I found it interesting because this one in particular, right out the gate, hits you with a trailer for Shanghai Noon. And
Jesus.
And
is that Owen Wilson and Jackie Chan?
Yeah, and it featured a song at the end by Uncle Kracker.
Oh my gosh, man. That's bringing it back.
And then it goes into a trailer for Mission to Mars.
Wow.
In which, like, in the menu, you can play with all of these, like, simulation things. Like, who wants to buy Mission to Mars, the DVD for Mission to Mars, and then go and, like, mess around with, like, science stuff on the, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It was silly. But some people who are into that space stuff might like it. But that one was funny because it was like boasting this 5.1 EX surround sound. Get that 5.1.
I always loved those.
I loved it.
I always loved those sort of like the THX or just those 5.1 sort of like ads. Like they really want you to go out and buy a surround sound setup, you know?
Yeah. Well, the THX one, it was just so loud. It was like scary loud. It was like, holy crap. My head almost exploded like scanners up in here, man.
That's the one and only George Lucas, man. I think he founded THX.
I love George.
Thank
you, George.
But let's go back to 2000 and let's listen to this clip of Ebert and now Roper. Siskel had passed in, I think, the first quarter or second quarter of 1999. So that's why Roper's on the show now.
There's not much room in Gone in 60 Seconds for any of the characters. It's all behavior and mood, flashy photography, and special effects. I couldn't believe it when the climax took place inside one of those tired old movie cliche flame and steam factories where the steam and the flames fill the background while they chase each other in the foreground up steel ladders, and then they, of course, hang by their fingertips from the catwalks, which are very badly constructed and collapse underneath them. The movie was produced by Jerry Bruckheimer with his usual moody skies, hard-boiled dialogue, shallow characters, and action that looks good but feels like a technical exercise.
I have a theory I'm working on about Nicolas Cage movies, and the weirder his hair and the stupider his name, the worse the movie. You know, in Face Off, he was Castor Troy. In Con Air, he was Cameron Poe. And here he's Memphis Reigns. And he looks like he was tackled by somebody with a henna bottle that just rubbed it on his head. It's a stupid movie. It's a terrible movie. You mentioned a lot of things I'd have to agree with about the casting. You've got somebody as wonderful as Angelina Jolie. She disappears halfway through the movie. Delroy Lindo is basically playing the Jackie Gleason character in Smokey and the Bandit. But this thing isn't even as smart or clever as Smokey and the Bandit.
Absolutely. You know, Cage has a certain weirdness about him that I find real attractive, and there's one shot in this movie that uses it where he kind of goes like this.
Well, that's his move. That's one of his Nicolas Cage moves.
And I like that move, and basically this movie doesn't have time for Nicolas Cage. This movie doesn't have time for anything. It's all kinetic action. The actors are essentially just cut out puppet props who are put in the cars and put in the explosions.
And you're talking about great actors like Robert Duvall, completely wasted. And the plot is arbitrary. Oh, you have to steal all these cars in 4 days. Why? Because the bad guy says so. It's a really, really disappointing movie, given the quality of the cast, at least.
You got it.
Well, they didn't like it.
Oh, come on. I don't think these guys are taking it in. I don't think they're thinking it all through.
No, they seem to be, like, pshaw. Like, I'm too good for Gone in 60 Seconds.
Right. Well, at least related to plot. Like those other gripes, I mean, that's subjective. That, that could just be what they like. They didn't care for some of the aspects, but you can't tell me that there's that their whole motive is because the bad guy says so. They put Kip Raines in a car, in a crusher, and had him, it was going to get squished, man.
Yeah, that's hardcore.
You know, like, it's not because the bad guy says so. It's if he doesn't steal the cars, then his brother and his mother are both going to die. Like, did they even watch the whole movie? Jesus.
Well, the whole setup of the movie is the failure of Kip Raines. Like, that's why his brothers has to come back into town. There's a lot, sort of a deeper theme here. You know, I'm not sure how long Kip Raines had to do it. It could have been weeks, if not months. So,
yeah, I really think the plot is simple enough that it creates a great story and something that really like kind of resolves in the end and has kind of that like happy ending.
Right.
And it's effective in that sense, but it's complex enough in the things that like kind of the setbacks they face and the different like elements of like history between Nick Cage and Robert Duvall, history between Nick Cage and Sway and Angelina Jolie. Like, there's things about the character depth and backgrounds that I think really provide a lot of payoff for the movie. And I don't know, like, I don't know if you could argue that Angelina Jolie, he said she goes away halfway through the movie. Well, yeah, when you've got a crew of like, you know, in the Ocean's movies, you're not getting the same big actors like all the time. They gotta show different shots of the different crew members. Like,
yeah,
just get over it. It's the kind of heist movie you're watching. Like, it's that kind of movie. It's gonna bounce around a lot.
Yeah, it's a big ensemble blockbuster, and like you said, when you have this many characters and sort of the way the plot sort of pans out is that you have all these characters going throughout Long Beach and Los Angeles, you know, trying to find these other cars and boost them. Well, yeah, the camera's going to, you know, cut around to each sort of set of characters and bounce around. And I don't even think Angelina Jolie was that big of a actress at that point in time. This was probably...
No, she wasn't.
This was pre Tomb Raider, which was sort of like her larger blockbuster sort of leading role back in the day. I mean, before this, I can't even remember what she was in. She was in like Hackers.
I think she either won or was nominated for an Oscar for Girl Interrupted in '99.
Oh, okay.
So I guess like given that would have been either happening at the same time as this or just prior. Or, I mean, she might have Oscar time. I'm not sure if that could have been after this came out. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well,
how that all played out.
She could have been filming this.
She's on the rise though.
Yeah, she could have been filming this when she won the Oscar. So,
and she is kind of the only like real female character in here, really. I mean, aside from Memphis Randall Reigns' mom, Helen, you know, I mean, and her part in the diner is very brief. So,
well, and
you do kind of want to see Angelina Jolie in there, but I wouldn't come to the conclusion that it was not enough and not effective and all of that. I think she was great.
Yeah. And this is a Bruckheimer production. So, I mean, like,
damn right.
It's completely full of testosterone. And, you know, if you look at a couple years ago, you had Con Air come out, and that has hardly any female characters in it. You know, it has Cameron Poe's wife and his daughter. That's pretty much it. And as far as other female characters in Gone in 60 Seconds, there's Otto's wife, who I don't even know has a line, and she's the actress who plays Kate Winslet's mom.
Oh,
in Titanic.
Nice one. Okay.
But yeah, she didn't have hardly any lines.
I thought she looked like Susan Sarandon, but I knew she wasn't Susan Sarandon.
Yeah.
But that's. Did you realize it was Kate Winslet's mom, or did you have to check that
No,
out?
I knew just by looking at her. It's like, oh yeah,
Nice.
that's her mom in Titanic.
Nice one.
Yeah. I'll pull another one, not a female actress from the movie, but another sort of cameo is oh God, why am I forgetting his name right now? Oh, I have to look it up.
Who?
I'm looking it up right now. Michael Pena.
Oh yeah, Michael Pena. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you get your jollies off playing with dog shit.
That's sick, man. Let's get out of here, man.
It's got to be one of his earliest roles.
And he's like, I got him. Great scene. That was a good one. One cameo that I enjoyed watching this in this time period now, like watching it and thinking back, like I'm pretty sure it's Master P who plays Johnny B.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
you know, those of you who remember the late 90s and hip hop
Yeah.
and things that were going on back then.
Make 'em
No
say,
Limit Records. Yeah, Master P was up in here making them say
Na.
Right. 2 times in this movie.
Yeah. What a time to live, you know.
Absolutely.
But I think should we get into sort of the plot? We didn't really discuss it too much, I guess, but
Sure.
And that'll sort of tie into the next clip we have. But pretty much the movie starts out. Kip Raines, played by Giovanni Ribisi, him and his crew have taken a job by Raymond Calitri, this big hotshot sort of crime boss living on the piers of Long Beach. And he's given the mission to Kip for, I believe it's $200,000 and 50 cars. And Kip seems to be on his last sort of like, I don't know, it doesn't seem feasible probably at this point that he's going to be able to get the job done. And I guess how does he sort of...
Well, they get busted on that last job because he's street racing with that
Oh, that's
car
right.
at the stoplight, and they bring the fuzz to their hideout.
Right,
and
that's true.
They break the black light. The cops come in, and
All the cars are impounded.
Yeah, exactly. So at that point, it's like all of their work was undone, and you know they're at the point where the job is still on the line. They still have to steal the cars, but they got to start all over again. And they get a hold of Kip and basically take him, and that then causes what's his name? Atlee Jackson, played by Will Patton. He has to go and ask Memphis or Randall Raines, played by Nick Cage, for a favor, and to ask him to come out of retirement, and in order to save his brother and satisfy the job that they agreed to go back in action, assemble a crew, and steal all 50 cars. And I believe at the time he accepts the job, it's 3 days until the due date, or the time that it's due. But as they kind of assemble the crew of all these old friends, and they combine forces with Kip's crew, these young guys, and the old crew, the old veteran dogs, and that creates some nice dynamics. And then they basically plan on doing it all in one night. But but in doing so, they also kind of cause our friends, the Grand Theft Auto detectives, played by Delroy Lindo and Timothy Oliphant, to come sniffing around again.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say Detective Roland Castlebeck. It's not his first rodeo trying to track down and put Memphis Reigns behind bars. This is like the one that got away for Castlebeck. So it's pretty cool.
And what I like about this is that this is sort of the first time we're seeing these characters, I guess, interact. And even with Randall Reigns, before we actually see him, working the go-kart track, on the outskirts of Los Angeles, somewhere off in the middle of nowhere, he's sort of portrayed as this kind of like mythic figure, like the guy,
Yeah.
like the greatest of all time.
Well, when Memphis or Randall comes back and meets with Raymond Calitri that first time to try to settle the $10,000 debt that Kip had from an advance, he brings him the $10,000, and Calitri is like, the infamous Memphis Reigns or whatever. And he said when he left the Long Beach area, auto theft or Grand Theft Auto went down like 42%, which is awesome. I mean, to set the stage that like this guy is so like infamous that he's just like responsible for almost half of the auto theft in the entire city.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's great.
All right, but let's check out this clip with Randall Reigns being that white whale that got away from these detectives.
I get this call from this uniform, Axton, very nice man, remembers everything. This man calls me up, says, guess who's back in town? I say, who? He says, Randall Reigns. I say, Randall Reigns, the car thief? He says, yeah. I say, impossible. He says, no, he's back. I say, no, he's not. He says, yes, I will bet you $200 I just saw Randall Reigns.
You guys said a lot. Look, detective.
No, whoa. What's really, really ironic about this, 2 nights ago, we snared these 13 fresh stones waiting for export. Right? Now, at the time, I'm thinking, this feels like Randall Reigns. Now, I didn't have your panache, your flash, but just felt like Randall Reigns. And now here you are.
Look, I don't know what you boys are looking for, but I just got back, okay? It was a family emergency. Now, that's the truth.
Family emergency. Yeah, I got a family emergency too, Randall. I gotta go tell my woman that I just lost $200 on a stupid deal.
She's mean.
What?
She can be mean.
Come here, Randall. Take those glasses off, Randall, please. Do me a favor. 6 years ago, you make a real smart move. You retire from a life that's gonna get you busted or killed, or maybe even both. And I'm thinking, I'm not putting you away when I had a chance. It's like this big fuck up the ass of this real impressive career that I've had.
Oh, yeah. Well, without disappointment, you can't appreciate victory.
Eleanor tell you that.
Well, now that's hidden below the belt.
Yeah, all right, let me tell you about below the belt, Randall. I tell you what, from here on out, if you walk across the street outside of a crosswalk, if you roll through a stop sign, if you use an aerosol can in a manner other than directed, I don't care. You make one slip and I will put you away for good.
Okay. By the time you get out, asshole, there won't even be cars. I'll be cruising around in your little spaceships. That's gonna suck.
In one scene, you can establish sort of this history between these characters. Like we talked about, like Randall Reigns was the one that got away, and it's sort of eating at that detective.
And he slipped in Eleanor too.
That's
which is
true.
Some really great like foreshadowing and suspense element of like, multiple times they put her in there. Eleanor even has like its own theme almost within the score of the movie. So, there's a lot that really does very well for the movie in that scene. I love that scene. And there's comic relief in there too. Like Timothy Olyphant, it was pretty cheesy when he's talking about the spaceships and shit, but I really liked the part about it saying his wife's mean, and and there's a little bit at the end of that where the two detectives talk to each other and he's like, who's Eleanor? And he's like, it's a damn car, and don't talk about my wife.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. It's some good stuff in there. So I really like the dynamic between these detectives and the fact that they just kind of off the cuff assume a history. It really lends to the movie. You don't have to like start from scratch. It's like these guys have been going at it cat and mouse for years, and you just get thrown into the middle of it. I love that about this movie.
Yeah, well, even when their chief tells them to lay off, and there's
the homicide guy.
There's homicides to worry about, and then these guys are worrying about Grand Theft Auto,
right?
So they have sort of their own mission, and I just feel like it's a great sort of dynamic between these detectives and the other ensemble. That's sort of doing the heist mission, and even when what's the veteran detective's name?
Castlebeck.
Even when Castlebeck actually visits their sort of their warehouse,
Otto's garage,
Otto's garage. Well, I thought that scene was great, and it sort of, I don't know, it establishes kind of a relationship or rapport with these characters, and you're sort of, I guess you're rooting for Randall Raines and his crew to win, but at the same time, you're sort of, I don't know, I don't view the detectives as villains necessarily. That's Raymond Calitri, but
exactly,
I don't know, it's kind of this yin and yang sort of thing.
Right. Well, and there's been different movies that have done that, and I feel like it sometimes pans people's enjoyment of the movies. Like, I can't remember which one we did recently, but we've done a few, or at least one movie where you've kind of got these like multiple villains or a lack of a prominent villain. And the detectives, although they are in pursuit of our ensemble of our crew, they're not bad guys. They're good. They're just the ones that are kind of opposing. And Raymond Calitri, he's in the movie so seldomly that he's not really that strong of a villain either. So you kind of have it basically is taking that like strong villain and like splitting it in half and kind of divvying it up amongst these two parts, the detectives and the boss man. So whether that, I think that works really well in this movie, especially given how it ends and just kind of the resolution of the movie. It really like wraps all of that and bundles it up in a nice, pretty package.
Yep.
At the end, but it's risky. It's not a good guy versus bad guy with a happy ending type of approach. It's more complex than that.
Yeah. All right. Well, after the break, we're going to be getting into sort of the core theme of Gone in 60 Seconds and how this movie sort of differs from other heist films. So we'll be right back. Audible is offering our listeners a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. Just go to audibletrial.com/abominations and browse the unmatched selection of audio programs. Download a title free and start listening. It's that easy. Go to audible.com/abominations and get started today. I think it's safe to say that you could say that the main theme or sort of overarching backbone of this movie is brotherly love. That's what this movie is really about, is an older brother who sort of went off to sort of be on his own, so he wouldn't influence his younger brother, and hopefully that his younger brother wouldn't follow his path, but he ended up doing it anyway. And when he thought leaving was the better thing to do. Probably the better thing to do was to stay and watch over your younger brother, so that way you could, make sure he didn't follow that same path. And I think that's what Randall Raines realizes in Gone in 60 Seconds. But I have a clip lined up here. It's Randall and Kip Raines on the porch having a discussion, and Randall mentions that he didn't do it for the money. It was all about, just enjoying boosting the cars and, driving off to Palm Springs. So let's listen to this clip.
6 years does a lot of different things to people. I don't know where you went, but, you're in there, you're talking about being normal. I mean, you were always the one who was going after the easy money.
I didn't do it for the money. I did it for the cars. Gleaming in Marina blue, Sunfire yellow, Marlboro red, begging to be plucked. And I'd do it. I'd boost her and just blast to Palm Springs, instantly feeling better about being me. And then, the next day it seems like I'm getting shot at, my friends are dying, people are going to jail. I didn't like what I'd become.
Yeah, and then you left, and then I didn't have a brother anymore. And now you want to give me advice, and I don't even know you. And, I got my own family now. I got my own friends. And, you say what you want about them, but they're loyal.
Well, when you hit the wall, the same thing's going to happen. You and your family are either going to get shot or get a 5-year jail at Corcoran.
Wonderful scene.
Yeah, it's great. I just want to give a shout out to Trevor Rabin, who did the score on this movie.
Magnificent.
Oh, if you listen to that clip again, I'm not saying play it, but the way that when he's talking about boosting the car and blasting to Palm Springs and it's euphoric.
It is
the sound. And then as Giovanni Ribisi starts talking about Memphis leaving and not having a brother anymore, and there's this tension there in the music, and then it kind of resolves again as Nick Cage kind of finishes off and states why he came back or why he had to leave and the reasons for that. So it's just a great scene, and you could tell Giovanni Ribisi is just such a mess. I mean, he's the breakfast he makes, and he's all kind of sweaty and dirty,
pouring beer into the eggs.
Burning it. Yeah, pouring beer in the whatever that was, and spilling the salt, and burning his hands on the toast, and he's just a mess without some sort of someone to look up to. It truly is it's an example of, it's obvious that he needs Memphis to help him, and I think at that point moving forward, you're just fully invested in and you can understand why Memphis isn't going to just turn away and leave again. This time he's got to be in it for his brother and his mother.
Yeah. Yeah, leaving is not the better thing to do. He should have been there for his little brother.
I think he feels responsible to a certain extent, because he was the one that he can now see that it was almost his creation, the person he was before, even though he left it behind, his reputation and his brother thinking that was so cool, and he wanted to be him. And it creates this entire series of events, even though he had thought he he left it behind. So it seems like a realistic and you know, a dynamic that is very human, and it's kind of the way it's written.
Well, Ebert and Roper didn't think so.
No, they did not.
Unfortunately. But let's get into sort of how this movie differs from other heist movies. And clearly when I was watching this, I was like, oh my God, this is really sort of familiar to, you know, like Ocean's 11, which I think that came out maybe a year or two after this. It had to have been 2001 or 2002, right in there. But this is definitely a heist movie, you know. These guys end up having to steal 50 cars in one night to avoid, you know, if they try to spread it out throughout 3 days. They mentioned by the time the first couple of cars are stolen, you know, the next day, the heat is on. So these guys just decide to do it in one night, and it just feels like this massive heist, like the equivalent of like in the Ocean's movie of these guys, you know, stealing from a high profile Las Vegas casino. It feels like that sort of scale. Yeah.
And the way that they introduce all of the ensemble cast members and the characters, like, I love the way they kind of have this call list and they kind of go out to each one. That's very Ocean's feeling to me. And, you know, you've got some colorful characters in there that are, you can kind of tell who's the muscle and who's the one who's the clever talker and who's the tech guys, and you know what I mean? Like they each have their own role, and that's very Oceans-esque. But I think that the car element is something that I can't say we've seen a lot of. You know, in a lot of these Hollywood heist movies, at least not lately. One thing that I loved about this movie is, I'm not sure if it had any impact on it, but Grand Theft Auto 3 came out in 2001, in October of 2001, and it almost had elements of, like, you know, you've got this list and you got to go out and collect the cars on the list. And I guess just kind of like having this movie out there and then being able to kind of like play it on a game. I know they're two different things, but I really thought it made me love Gone in 60 Seconds that much more, just kind of given the fact that I could like play a game and kind of like try to get feel like I'm living in that world as Randall Raines.
That's awesome. Delivering the goods to Raymond Calitri.
Yeah. Steal the car and then bring it back and park it in the garage underneath you know, or in a warehouse or under a bridge or wherever the garage was.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is probably one of my favorite heist movies. And before watching it again, like I hadn't watched it for several years, probably maybe like 5 years or something like that. This movie used to be on TV quite a bit, so I would catch it on there. But I guess I kind of forgot that this was a heist movie. Yeah, they steal 50 cars, but I never sort of viewed it in the same vein as like Ocean's 11 or like The Italian Job, movies like that. I don't know. I sort of, I guess I sort of viewed it more as like Fast and the Furious, like the first one more so.
Sure.
But yeah, this is straight up a heist movie.
Yeah, I think that kind of the elements of I like that they throw Eleanor in there, and some of these like foreshadowing things, like the detectives picking up on the Mercedes keys, and like every step of the way, Castlebeck seems to have almost to be a step ahead of these guys, and yet they still manage to slip away. Like, I mean, it almost makes Castlebeck look really bad because he's got the Mercedes keys, and he knows where the car is. He knows where, he knows he's going to save Eleanor for last. So it's like, how does he not bust these guys? Like, it just blows my mind. And yet that's what makes it so awesome and badass, that Randall Raines is so good that even when the heat is like fully on and has all the information they need to bust this heist and squash this thing, they still can't catch him because he's freaking Memphis Raines.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I think like, yeah, in the Ocean's movies and Italian Job and some of these heist movies, they are like renowned and like legends of stealing things and stuff like that, like obviously. But I think it's just the factor, like the cool factor of a 67 Shelby Mustang GT or whatever, GT 500 or whatever it is, Eleanor, like, there's just something so awesome about that, and what you can do with it is, I guess, just cranking it up a notch as far as the excitement level, like loud revving engines, stunt driving, like all of that stuff is just so awesome and fun. And they do kind of the climactic jump of the car at the end. I mean, it's just a really fun, wild ride. It's suspenseful and it's action-packed. It's a Bruckheimer film production. So what's not to like? I mean, it separates itself from those movies just based on kind of the testosterone level of it all,
Yeah. And like we mentioned earlier, they sort of slip in sort of the hints of Eleanor, and it sort of builds to this final moment. And, it's just the slight mentions of Eleanor, and, Castlebeck mentions that, oh no, he's going to save that one for the last one. He's afraid of it. It sort of builds this sort of suspense and excitement for this like final moment, to the point where when you finally get to see Eleanor, and Randall Raines is stroking his hand on the fenders and the hood of the car.
Yeah, I think those are the movies, or I'm sorry, those are the moments of this movie that put its kind of signature stamp on it. Like, those are what make this movie different than any other movie. It's unique to this film that, like, you have that kind of relationship between Memphis Raines and Eleanor. And when they go to see Eleanor before they steal her, and just to take a picture, and all the rest of the guys stay back as Memphis kind of goes and talks to her, and like you said, runs his hand, and I mean, all of that is just like so unique and awesome. And some people might have hated that and thought it was stupid, but I mean, I think if you're a fan of this movie, you probably like that. There's not really, you're either one or the other. And I don't know, it's that kind of stuff that really just kind of serves the movie. It's just like she's a character all in her own,
Yeah. Well, and there's even the fact that, pardon me. I guess we can start getting into some of our, I guess, the pros and cons of the movie. But I love that all the cars in this movie, and I don't know if it's misogynistic or what, but all of the cars have female names, and I don't know. I just find that sort of makes these cars kind of like characters in the movie. Eleanor is definitely a character in this movie.
I think it's because, well, it serves the purpose of the code words, or the, like they mention in the movie, but it's also they think cars are sexy.
Yeah.
It's a compliment to women. I would look at it like it's a compliment, that these are beautiful objects of attraction. They're things that they love. So to it's like giving a boat. It's tribute kind of thing, like naming your boat after your wife or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I always love that about this movie. Is that I don't know, it makes these things that are sheets of metal, and it sort of in your brain it sort of turns them into something a little bit more real, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
But yeah, Eleanor, man, would I like to take a go?
There's a wide
Eleanor.
variety too.
Yeah, they do have a nice variety of like modern and like classic cars, and
there's a limo, Hummer. There's a truck that they get from the impound with a huge brush guard, and they just like power their way through the cop cars out of that parking garage or whatever.
Now, I guess maybe we start getting into our. I guess I'll mention a couple cons. Is I would have liked to know a little bit more about Raymond Calitri.
Yeah,
you get a little bit of.
I would agree.
Maybe his past, and I mean,
well,
it's all sort of mentioned that he's just the new hot shot. Running the.
He
the
mentions
docks
that he
Long Beach.
He got kicked out of like Germany and France. I think he mentioned something like that, or maybe it was England But he's basically come to America, like not because he wanted to, but because it was kind of the only place left. And he makes a comment like pissing on American culture and talking crap about baseball and
right.
But did you get the sense that what he's doing in that big warehouse is building furniture? Like, is the furniture thing something that he just does as a hobby, or was that factory there to build furniture and that's his front for his car sale business?
I think it's both. I think he actually likes to build furniture, but I don't know if I don't think.
I just wasn't sure, like, because he mentions it. I wasn't sure whether to interpret that as that's just his hobby and some like dialogue to throw in there just for fun, or if it was like this is the front for his business and he actually deals in stolen cars.
I think it's a hobby and a front.
Gotcha. I think so too.
Yeah, I think that would probably be the better bet. Is that
I feel like that would serve the story more.
Yeah, well,
rather than just being like, I like to build furniture. Like, okay,
but I guess
that's nice.
The only time you really see the furniture is when Randall first visits Raymond, and he's showcasing the chairs and talking about how wood's so much better than metal, and then he built a casket for Kip. But even when they go to the warehouse in the third act at the end, you don't really get a sense of that this is like a furniture warehouse.
Right. I have a minor gripe that I encountered, or that I now have after watching it again, with the first interaction between Randall and Raymond Calitri when he tries to give him the $10,000 back.
I know where you're going.
To settle the debt. Raymond Calitri throws the 10 grand in the air, and falls on the ground and rejects the offer to settle the debt, or to say it's finished, done, whatever. Or, well, that's at the end. So I'm sorry. Those lines are at the end. But in that office, they then just leave the money on the floor. Like, Randall doesn't pick up his 10 grand off the ground. And I know that Kip is life's threatened and all of that, but to leave $10,000 on the ground and just not pick it up and just leave it there and leave and go off to the yard, like, part of me wonders, like, if after he agrees to do the job in 3 days, does he then go, okay, I'm going to go pick up my 10 grand off the floor now?
Yeah. I don't know. I doubt he did, man. I think in that sort of situation, he could care less about the money.
And I know. And this is like totally overthinking and really like, you know, there's in movies, there's always going to be moments like this where it's like, oh, that's a Hollywood moment where, you know, when you're really invested and like locked in on what you're watching and trying to understand the mentality of the characters and live in their shoes, you think about stuff like that. But so I know I'm overanalyzing, but that's just one thing, and I think that's the only one in the whole movie that really kind of made me think like, oh, that's, you know, I don't know if that's totally realistic, because from the looks of it, I mean, Randall could probably use that $10,000. You know, they could use that for the resources that they might need to save Kip. But yeah, it's a movie moment.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, did Memphis even know that Kip was in a car about to be crushed at that point in time?
I don't think so. I don't think
yeah,
so.
I think you could. You do have the argument that there
wasn't really the sense of urgency needed yet.
No, he was quite calm.
He said like, you know, where's my brother? Take me to my brother or whatever.
Yep. So
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a fair argument.
The other things were, you know, like some of the performances I thought were kind of the supporting actors were kind of corny, you know, and that's just something you get out of these supporting ensemble. They're not always going to be fantastic, but I did enjoy like the performances from like characters like Freb, like the guy we mentioned, the scene where they're trying to get the dog to poop, and they're like, you know,
what do they say about him? He can order a mean pizza.
He can order a pizza like nobody's business or whatever, and he goes, "Hey, people got to eat, right?" And he looks like Keanu Reeves' younger brother.
He does.
I swear to God,
he's Randy Quaid's son in Independence Day.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I don't remember the actor's name, but I recognize him.
His name is James Duvall or Duval with one L though, so he's in no relation to Robert Duvall.
Oh, okay. What a
but Scott Conn in there as Tumbler and Mirror Man. He was entertaining. That guy that does all the gadgets and electronics and stuff like that. But I didn't really care for Toby, played by William Lee Scott, the kid that's like, I can hack into the DMV mainframe. I can change VIN numbers. I can do a lot of really tricky stuff. You know, and then he gets shot because he's like dinking around in the garage at that pool party deal, you know, and they're stealing the Hummer in that scene.
Yeah.
And then he ends up getting shot. And,
it's the Escalade.
You know. Oh, the Escalade, yeah. They tell him not to go, you know, he sneaks out of the trunk.
Yeah.
Ends up getting shot. They told him it's dangerous, man, because he's bound for college or whatever.
Right.
But
oh, gosh.
And Timothy Olyphant. So that's another one where he's kind of the number 2 to Castlebeck. I really like Delroy Lindo as Roland Castlebeck.
Yeah,
I think
me
he's
too.
Great.
Yeah.
But Timothy Olyphant is kind of hit and miss for me. I mean, I think he does a good job of kind of being like the second, you know, he's more for kind of these like witty, sarcastic remarks and that kind of thing, and the play back and forth between those two. Like, I like it better with two of them than if it was just Castlebeck by himself.
I agree.
But like when Randall kind of goes to the Mercedes and he realizes the van is like 2 houses closer, he walks away and Timothy Olyphant's like, we might as well roll down the window and wave. You know, stuff like that. I thought that worked pretty well. Just kind of like, you know, being the voice that has no filter and he talks to Castlebeck, kind of whatever comes to his mind, he says it, and it sometimes it pisses him off, which is good comedy.
Yeah. Well, it's that classic like buddy cop trope where it's like one is the straight man and the other sort of the more comedic and witty cop, you know. But yeah, I think there's I don't have nearly as many cons as I do than things I like about this movie.
Yeah.
I think Raymond Calitri could have been a little bit better. That actor is sort of shafted in a lot of movies that he's in. He played Malekith in Thor 2: The Dark World.
Okay. Yeah.
And that guy didn't get much of a do in that movie. But I mean, yeah, it's cheesy and over the top, but that's what I like about this movie. It's full of testosterone. It's a Bruckheimer movie. That's what you get, man. It's just sweat and nitroglycerin. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. I watched the bonus features about some of the chase sequences.
Ooh.
And I don't know if you remember, but there's a scene where they're like racing through an alley and they shoot out into the street, and there's a bus that comes that basically T-bones the cop car.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And Bruckheimer was talking about how they kind of go about shooting those sequences, and he said that they tie the bus and the cop car together via a pulley system so that they know the exact distance required for the bus to 100% like make contact with the cop car in the right place.
Jeez.
So like the bus is pulling the cop car.
Wow.
And then hitting it. I mean, that is so awesome. And then they control therefore controlling the speed in which they collide, and then you don't need a driver for the cop car. So you have someone driving Eleanor, just like, just going in front of the bus, like squeaking out just in the nick of time, but then for sure you're going to get that impact with the bus to the cop car. It's awesome. Movie magic.
Yeah, it's crazy what goes into sort of driving stunts. There's so much time and effort that's spent on all these epic chase sequences, and I can't imagine what it took to sort of complete that last chase sequence with Eleanor. Like the amount of time that went into that is probably just astonishing. Several months of like prepping and planning to get that thing done.
Yeah. One last thing I wanted to just talk about, or at least bring up, was I love the way that this movie resolves, and Castlebeck kind of gives Randall the out at the end of the movie. He knows he's going to help take down Raymond Calitri, and he knows what Randall's motives are to save his brother. He gets all of that, and even though it's his unicorn, Castlebeck's unicorn is Memphis Reigns unicorn is Eleanor.
Yeah. Yep.
And at the end he realizes who the bad guy really is. Yep. And lets him go. And I absolutely loved that. I thought it was so cool. It's like, now we've got two heroes. We can like and root for Castlebeck, and we can obviously like and root for Memphis Reigns. And Calitri's going to go down and be, the one that gives us that payoff in the end of seeing him go down. It's just great. I just think that wrapped up, like I said earlier, it wraps this movie up in a nice pretty package with that happy ending, and you get that like Fast and Furious kind of ending where they're all together like hanging out at the garage, and they give Nick Cage Eleanor as a gift.
Oh yeah, is that the same Eleanor though? I was wondering about that. Is that the same?
I don't know. They talk about her needing some work, but I got the feeling that it was a different one that was just in need of a little repair.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. I'd have to check it out again to answer that one.
Yeah, but man, Gone in 60 Seconds is a great time watching this movie. I had a blast
Absolutely.
watching it.
Me too. It's always good. It's very rewatchable. The score is good. It creates those kind of like beautiful kind of euphoric moments of like watching Memphis Reigns and Eleanor in action, or just kind of him just checking her out. It's such a guy movie though.
It is.
I'll say that it is a dude movie.
Yeah,
but
unless you're in a car Unless you're
What's that?
I was just gonna say, unless you're a woman who's into cars.
Into cars, sure.
Yeah. It's pretty much a dude movie.
Yeah, but we can like it, and I have for years. So thank you, Nick Cage, for another successful edition.
Yeah, I don't know. By the time we're done with this podcast, not this episode, but this show in general, I wonder how many Nick Cage movies we're gonna have in the list. So, but Adam, what do we have lined up for next week?
Next week we are going to we're gonna stick with the early 2000s. We're gonna go 1 year later into 2001, and we're gonna go into some Out Cold for you guys. So hopefully we've got some listeners that enjoy a little comedy, and this one is one where I laughed blue in the face. So look forward to next week's episode for Out Cold.
Yeah, it should be a good time. Sort of staying on the theme of like extreme sports. We went from street racing and boosting cars to epic snowboard comedy. So I'm excited for Out Cold.
Yep.
I haven't watched this movie in maybe 10 years, so it should be a good time. But you can also call into the show at 616-594-0764. Leave us a voicemail, and we'll feature you on the show. Leave us your thoughts on Out Cold or Gone in 60 Seconds, or you can email us at abominationspod@gmail.com. And for Adam and myself, we'll see you next week.